So the photo shows that we have a nice white environment. There's a little bit of shadowing on this part, so there's not much light coming from the front left, but more left behind and the right front. And the backdrop goes up in the background because we can see this is a white reflection. This is actually from the white backdrop. Okay, so what we can do first is we basically know how to make the backdrop, where the camera is, and where the lights are. So, backdrop. Let's build this one. And here, let's pop this one up. Here we will add bevel command. Let's make it nice and big. 15.7. Okay, and shade smooth. Okay, we take a look at the object from here, roughly. So now we can, in object mode R and Z, rotate, for example, the backdrop till maybe this fits like this. Okay, local space, maybe move it back a little bit. Okay, good. Then Shift A an empty, Shift A camera, move the camera away, Shift select the empty, Control T, track to constraint. And I should turn this one back on. Okay, now we can scale down. Here we can set this to 20 centimeters, and this is kind of like our cam tracker. Okay, let's press 0 so we can look through the furniture part. And it looks pretty dramatic, but that's not the angle we have. We have to go up a little bit, the camera just a little bit higher, and we can adjust the width, so maybe 1000 by 2000. Oh, that's too much. Maybe something like this. So maybe 500 by 1000 or not. Let's see. Well, maybe there. Okay. There is a little bit of perspective foreshortening. So if I zoom in the object, you see this does not look very good. So maybe 5.5. GZ out. Yeah, maybe a little bit lower. And now I pay attention to what type of a shape do I see here? Do I see the same shape there? So maybe GX, move this a little bit there. Okay, I see this arc is close to there. So actually this looks maybe more tick like this there. Okay. This actually now tells me also that those have to be a little bit higher. There, turn this off. And we could actually adjust the curve for the bevel, but because you see this is bigger than there, this is smaller. But that's fine. And this one actually I want just to move a tick lower. Yeah. Okay, let's see. That's a little bit closer. Good. This object is actually also more centered, so I can G and X maybe, or simply G, move this around till, for example, my object is a little bit more centered. Okay, good. And maybe let's see if we can do a little bit more of a framing there. GZZ, zoom in a tick more. Good. Maybe a tick up. So here's a little trick. I select the camera. And now with the empty, you see I point where the camera looks at. but there's also called something that's shift. And now I can make the camera move left and right without changing the perspective foreshortening effect. And you see now it feels like I moved the object up and down. Here, let me zoom in a little bit more so you can see it. If, for example, I would move the object, you see the perspective view changes. And with the shift, it doesn't. So this way I can nicely shift the lens so I can position the object more. A little bit more on top, a little bit less on the bottom, so it's not so boringly centered. Okay, good. Backdrop is set, camera is set. Let's maybe give the backdrop a color, just floor, diffuse, basic. That's good. Now we have to add the lights, so light on the left and the light on the right, behind and in front. So let's create an area light. I want this one maybe starting with a 1 meter, goes to the back, rotate 90 degrees so it looks at the object there. You see the shadow is not going towards to the other leg, so the light is a little bit rotated because the shadow is at an angle. If I now look through the camera, Shift B, just make a border area and also save. Shift Z, let's do rendering. There we can see now the shadow, and you see actually there's a pretty sharp edge. So this area light is too big, 50 centimeters. And this gets better. What about 25 centimeters? Yeah, maybe a little bit. Okay, let's keep this for the moment. So this is light number 1. You also see we blow out the area behind, and also there the area behind there is blown out. Perfect. Good. Let's make another area light. Here again 1 meter, and let's move it to there. Then we can rotate it up a little bit. There. Move it nicely away so it doesn't blow out the ground. And let's take a look. Ooh, way too much light, so maybe 50, too much, 25. Okay, this is probably too much. Ah, see, 100. Way too much contrast in the back. 0, only the front light. 50. Well, we're getting close. And there we see already. This area doesn't get much light, but this, like here, and this back area, like there, gets light. And we get close to the shadows. But I think there's maybe a big light coming from the top, because you see how this area is nicely washed out. So, how can we do this? Maybe first let's see, when we add more light this way, does this actually help in any way? It brightens everything up, but it doesn't really brighten up the shadows as much as I want. And then also here this is bright, and there you see there is some sort of a shadow happening. So, what's going on? Okay, so we have to study the shadows more. So, honestly, I did not do this rendering before, so I have to be explorative myself. So you see exactly the way how I would work as well. So I made a new area light. Where did it go? I hit it. I move it up on top. And I want to see how everything looks with this massive area light on top. Ah, look at that. I can cast a shadow below the object. Maybe 50 centimeters. Okay, there's something happening now. Good. And I will now go to here, make myself maybe a new viewport so I can always see the 3D objects better. And for the moment, maybe this on 2, this on 3, this on 4, so I can easily turn on and off the different layers for the lights. So let's turn the world down to maybe 0.1, and let's take a look at the top light. Okay, everything so far we do based on this wood material not even having any reflection on it yet, so we should pop in a basic wood reflection. So we add a mix and we add a glossy there. The glossy is kind of blurry, and then let's add a Fresnel, plug it in 0. Let's cut this for the moment so we see roughly where the reflection is. Okay, good. Because this actually changes the look of the top material. You see how much more light the diffuse gets, and with the reflection it's already a tick dimmer. Okay, so here is a linear edge, and I'm curious how they created that. Did they rotate the light? No, did they move it around? I see. Can rotate it a little bit. Yeah, maybe keep it there for the moment. So let's turn on maybe our back and front light, and you see now, yeah, this actually gets closer. You see there's a shadow on the ground, there's a light, and shadow with the legs. So I'm curious if maybe there's a strong shadow behind this leg, but not there, so I assume there is a light coming from there. So one light to there. Let's rotate it. Maybe get it close and see what's happening. No, that's not really doing it. So this could basically mean that the way how I position this light here is actually not really correct. Because I don't get this strong shadow. So what the heck did they do? I have a suspicion. Let's try this one out. RY90 rotated. It's just a big plane. I move the plane back. Here, move the plane to there. That's the way how they did it. See now this line, which I wasn't able to recreate with this top light, they probably just put a block element to there. So only this leg will cast a shadow and not this leg. So let's delete this one for the moment. And let's hide this one. Okay, and now the trick is trying to move this one in till, there you see it, it hides simply that lag. Okay, when we R and Z and rotate this light, doesn't do much, so I can keep it this way. Perfect. Good. Now maybe the position of this board can be adjusted. Let's see. I move this one to there, and maybe there, and there. Yeah, a little bit. You see, based on the distance, I can get a sharper shadow or a softer shadow. So I will keep it where it was. And as I said, this is literally the way how very often I work as well. When I see, for example, an image that looks interesting, I have no idea how they did it. So you need to start paying attention to all these details and play around. And the more you do it, the more actually you will figure out how, for example, they did the lighting. And then you will see They're always repetitive methods how they do it. Okay, perfect. So I would say this shadow is close. Maybe the slide is a tick too strong. Let's set it to 30. Yeah, okay. This back area here is very illuminated, so maybe let's make an area light. And I would like now to rotate this area light so it looks straight onto the backdrop. So how do I do this? This one is rotated along the Z minus 44. Let's say minus 45. There, it's easier. Select this one, 90, 45. Okay, minus 45 there. Now you see it, it looks perfectly onto it. Okay, but when I do a rendering, you see the edge of the area light. That's not really good. So first, let's set this to rectangle. And then I will say this is rather 1 meter, maybe by 2 meters. So it's a nice big block. And then I will lift this one up away from the ground. And now via the local rotation, click on the green. Here in my case, I can point it down onto the ground and I will blow out the back area. Maybe more power. There. So without it and with it. And you see this also affects, for example, the reflection. This is kind of dull because the background is gray. Blasting the backdrop with light makes actually then the reflection better. Okay, maybe 100. Yeah, okay. So this area here gets more light than there. This is too dark. So I can see, set this to white. Whoa, what did I do? Let's go back to here. Again, save. And maybe 0.25. A little bit lighting. Not too much. Very, very minimal. Okay. So we're actually getting very, very close. So this area, I'm not sure if this is maybe too small, so I make this into a square as well, 1 meter by 2 meters, so it's wider. And these shadows are a tick too soft, I think, but maybe 1.5 meters. Yeah. And there you can see the shadow actually goes from here to there, from there to there. If I set this one to be 1 meter, you see the shadow here go this way. So I think I want to rotate this a little bit in top view and then move it to there. And there you see now the shadows go more the direction where I want, and at the same time I put a little bit of lighting on these edges. Okay, so this is actually for a first test pretty good. This one is maybe too intense. Let's put this back to 50, 25. 0.5 to brighten everything up a little bit. No, this actually is a tick too big. 3.5. Okay. So with this world or background color, I basically simulate all the light that bounce back from the environment, kind of like the walls. This is really artificial, but it can help to brighten up your scene a little bit. But it does it artificially, so keep this really low. But if we compare now, this area is in shadow. This gets light. This is a little bit darker, it is darker. This shows reflection, and the shadows are also quite similar. So this one maybe again, make a 40. Okay, so what can we do now? Before we do the actual rendering, I would like to introduce you to the color management. So everything you see here right now is just the raw brute rendering result. And you can of course try to adjust the materials till everything fits, but everybody who does photography, you know, you take your photo with the raw camera and then later in Photoshop you adjust the colors. We can do the same here while we actually do the rendering. So here is the color management tool. Srgb you can keep. This for the moment you can keep as well. And here we have exposure. So we can, for example, adjust the exposure. We can adjust the gamma. And you see this way we already get a little bit more of contrast. This has some contrast. This lacks contrast. If we set this back to 0 and 1, that's a raw image. You see a little bit exposure and a little bit of gamma there. So that's one way. You can also use curves, similar to the gradation curves. There you see like a tiny adjustment and bang, colors get just more strength. Based on also if you want just to increase the brights, then go to here. If you just want to darken the darks, then you go to the lower left corner. Or if you want to be crazy, you can do this. Okay, so that's option 2. And option 3, something I like to work with a lot, are so-called camera response. And basically what it is, they measured in how actual film will look, because not every film you can buy for a film camera and you take a photo, the colors won't be the same. So we can select different camera films, and you see then it actually kind of like exposes or colorizes the rendering a little bit. And the one I find often useful is, for example, here the Canon Obtura. So here let's none, and there. So it's a little bit of a play. So not too much sometimes, but enough to just make these images look a tick more refined. See, this is pretty bland, and then here, bang, this reflection pops better. Let's go back to the Obtura, none. Let's pay attention to the reflection, pretty dull, and there. So this is a film or a setting for color management you want to find and figure out, and then we actually can go back and adjust maybe our lights a little bit. So maybe 15, so it's not too strong. And look, now we see these results fit a bit better. So this was too strong. Also here, this is like a line where it blows out. We kind of like have the same here as well. So okay, felt like maybe this is too strong, but maybe let's see what happens when we do this at 20. What happens if we do a 10? Yeah, no, see now we get more gray, but maybe 25. Okay, what happens with this light here, there? Set this to 0. There we don't have any shadow from the back coming. Maybe 10, 15, but with 10, you see already this is pretty good. That works actually. Okay, good. Yeah, so that's basically it for a quick demo in how to create a rendering based off a photo. Then we just build the model, and then we use the shadow and light information we see inside the photo. And then by imagining how the photographer set up the design or the studio, simply recreate our own studio, like with this shadow blocker or light blocker wall, to then create certain patterns we want. And that's it. Perfect. Just to bring this to an end, now we can figure out, well, how many pixels do we need? So, little trick. I can type in 2000 and then let this one render till everything's done with 2000, but I could also be smart and now, hey, down here is a shadow area. So just render this one till maybe I don't see any grain inside the shadow line anymore. So we're getting close, like 400. Okay, good, perfect. So then I can say no border. I'll turn the border back on. Or hold on 1 second. I'm just curious about something that maybe I've changed this a little bit again. So this, where was the display view? Oh, border render there. Ah, okay. Shift B can just draw something over it. So that's this line. So if we want to then maybe with 400 render it here, then we can. This is just done inside the 3D view. But then for the final rendering, obviously again we want to turn cropping off, set this to 100. We can set this then to the amount of pixels we need. If I need more pixels, I could, instead of adjusting the pixels, simply change the percentage. So now 1000 by 1300. And then set maybe the output folder and then click render. And then when we finish rendering, we save it as the other ones. And that's definitely everything for this part. In the next video, then I will show you, after we did, for example, like here, our prototype rendering. So now we solidified our idea. At this point now, after that, for example, is signed off, and then we can maybe think about, well, we have to build the stuff. So we want maybe to create more industrial strength CAD geometry. So we have to bring everything out into Fusion. And I will show you that process in the next video.